Hello, my name is Lincoln Bruick and I am a student medical doctor. Today I wanted to talk about an article I found from the New England Journal of Medicine about the financial toxicity of rapidly approved drugs. I'll go ahead and link the article's DOI and any supplemental information down below so you can check that out for yourself. Now, in this article, it begins with a story about a woman. She is diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This is a progressive neuromuscular disease. It affects the nerve cells in the brain and the spinal cord, and it presents with twitching and muscle weakness to begin with, and it eventually leads to the inability to move, speak, or even breathe. Currently, there's no cure for this disease. Back to the topic at hand, the article outlines how this patient started a GoFundMe campaign with her family in order to cover the cost of an all-terrain wheelchair so that she could still remain active, as well as the newly approved drug Relivrio. Because of the lack of treatments for the disease, it was expected that many patients would seek one of the few alternatives for this treatment. Unfortunately, while this drug was supposed to slow the decline in motor function, it did not show that it actually improved the outcomes, and it was removed from the market in April 2024. This specific drug was used on the standard approval track by the FDA, but despite this, there are still many drugs that are approved during the fast track and the accelerated approval pathway for these serious illnesses, and especially for drugs that treat illnesses with limited forms of care. The general idea is that because these drugs have illnesses with limited options, there's minimal or manageable adverse effects to these drugs, and they just believe that it will be beneficial to the people if they're just approved for the market. The reason this leads to financial toxicity is while there's really no thought to put into the price during the approval process, the cost of these drugs is actually determined by the manufacturer when it's put on the market. For this drug, specifically Relivrio, it was determined by the company to be $150,000 per year. There's obviously significant strain on the patient and their family to cover this cost and puts many individuals into medical debt. This not only affects quality of life, but can lead to the risk of sacrificing other aspects of their health and medical care. Now, private insurance will get to determine medical claims based on a person-to-person basis. There is Medicare. Unfortunately, this article also states that people with Medicare can also be responsible for 20% of the cost of these types of drugs. Pharmaceuticals that are approved on the fast track status, whether it be for diseases that are oncological or other serious illnesses, they're based on trials that are measured on surrogate endpoints. Now, in a clinical trial, a surrogate endpoint just means that it infers a drug could be related or will lead to a clinical endpoint, such as elongating the lifespan, but there is actually no guaranteed relationship with these clinical endpoints. Possibly the worst part is that patients who are going into medical debt for these types of drugs may not even know that these drugs are still being tested and can produce questionable benefits. Now, the authors of this article did have 3 suggestions as far as relieving this issue. The first one is just that the FDA labeling can be required to indicate if a drug results are from uncontrolled or used surrogate measures. This will allow patients more transparency on their expensive treatment plans. The second suggestion is regulating these prices through a drug price review board for drugs on the early stage trials. The last suggestion is similar, but instead of an actual review board reviewing each of these drugs to determine their cost based on benefits, they'd like to limit the out-of-pocket cost until the completion of post-approval studies. Now, I have some final thoughts on this article and some questions I wanted to leave. I can imagine that many of these families that are put into this position, they're very desperate to find some form of treatment. Even if a family knew about the undetermined benefits, would they still view action as better than inaction despite the potential harm that the aforementioned action can actually be accompanied by? How should these manufacturers and the FDA treat drugs for serious diseases that do not have a cure and limited option plans? What is the responsibility of the physician when discussing these types of treatment plans? And can they have too much influence when considering something that will certainly create financial toxicity as progressive as the disease itself? Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day and God bless. Thank you.